will further deepen our exploration of the theme, Unleashing Equitable Green Transformation in South Asia. Without further delay, I would like to welcome our esteemed moderators and panelists to the stage for our parallel session of Towards Circular Economy Implementation. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to our moderator of the session, Dr. Abid Kaim Suleri, Executive Director, Sustainable Development Policy Institute, and a member of COP29 International Advisory Committee. So, we have a virtual presentation from Dr. Pia Kurdlap, who has joined us virtually from Thailand, who is the founder and managing director at PXP Sustainability. I think he has already joined. We have another distinguished panelist, Dr. Dilliraj Khanal, economist and former member of parliament from Nepal. Dr. Nityananda, Director, Council for Social Development, India. Ms. Prakriti Mainali, Co-founder, Shakti Milan, Nepal. Ms. Pratikya Bausyal from Kathmandu University School of Management. And Ms. Devyani Hari, who is the Senior Director for the Center for Responsible Business, India. She will be joining us virtually. So without further ado or any delay, I now hand over the mic to the moderator of the session, Dr. Abid Suleri, and take it forward from here. Thank you.
Discussing some contours of circular economy and its implementation. As you might have realized, this South Asia Economic Summit started from greening the economy and discussing various aspects of a green economy, the financial requirements of it, the regulatory requirements of it, and all other Is it working now? Yes, it is working. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me briefly repeat what I said for the benefit of our two of our online participants today, the panelists. In this parallel session, we are discussing circular economy and its contours. I think the phrase circular economy and what does it entail, it is nothing new for our region. If one looks at a few decades back, so many of the things which are advocated in the name of circular economy in global north now, that have been a common practice in most parts of South Asia. We used to carry our own utensils to get our milk or curd. We used to carry our own bags to get our vegetables. We used to recycle and reuse everything that could be reused in our houses and in our offices. And the maximization of resources, resource use, that was a hallmark of our societies. Then, of course, we also modernized as other economies did. And then we realized that modernizing, it had, while it had its own benefit, it had its own cons as well. And that's why when the world is talking of circular economy, whenever I hear this term, I feel like this is the things that we have been doing in our childhood, and now we have to advocate our children and their children on the utility of those best practices. But on top of it, of course, it's not only about reusing and recycling, it's also about the efficient use of resources. It's also about managing waste proper and closing the loop so that instead of a linear economic growth, we are following a circular economic growth. But to talk it on further, I would request our presenter who has joined us online from Thailand for his setting presentation. And may I request Dr. Pia Kardiap, Founder and Managing Director, PXF Sustainability, Thailand. Sir, you have around 10 minutes for your presentation, ma'am, and then I'll come to rest of the panelists. So, Dr. Kardiap.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Dr. Abid. I agree a lot with a lot of what you said, that in many ways our societies have been embracing circularity since the beginning, and then there was modernization, and now we're coming back to these practices we've done before. So today, my presentation is about the landscape of the circular economy in the Asia Pacific region. And my name is Pia Kardiap. I'm the Managing Director of PXP Sustainability, and I was also a consultant to the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia Pacific. And last month we launched this position paper about the next frontier for circular economy in the Asia Pacific region. So for the next 10 to 12 minutes, I'll be sharing with you some of the key findings from this position paper that we published and is available online. Okay. So, as most of us in the room already know about the circular economy, there are three main principles: to eliminate waste and pollution, circulate products and materials at the highest value, and also regenerate nature. I think most of us have seen this diagram with the technological and natural cycles of material consumption and other activities in our economic systems. And when it comes to circularity, how far have we actually come? Well, what we have seen is that over the past decade, there has been a lot of interest globally in circular economy in the world and over here in Asia. We see a lot of dialogues, debates, public news stories about circular economy, and these have tripled over the past several years. But however, although there's been a lot of talk and speeches, many of these announcements have not been converted into ground level action. And circularity is definitely important when it comes to achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals, specifically goals 9, 12, and 13 on industry, innovation, infrastructure, responsible consumption, production, and climate action. And businesses have already taken the lead in implementing circular activities with and without government support. But more support is definitely needed from government and consumers if we want to achieve the vision of a circular economy. So in our position paper, the main question we tried to answer was, what can businesses in the Asia Pacific region do to implement the circular economy activities, and how can better government policies accelerate progress? So in this paper, there are some key highlights. So what we did was we were able to identify a total of 79 policies from the 5 regions in the Asia Pacific, and we cataloged them and ranked them in terms of their maturity. In this paper, we also showcased 7 major businesses in the Asia Pacific region who have demonstrated leadership in circular economy implementation in food and beverage, real estate, power generation, materials, chemicals, and more. We identified 6 different drivers of circularity and provide some real examples from the Asia Pacific region. And finally, we present one bold vision about what the next frontier of circularity could look like in the Asia Pacific region. So what are the 6 secrets of unlocking circularity? Well, based on our review of the landscape, we identified 6 key driving factors that can really move circularity forward. So these are infrastructure, regulation, education, finance, innovation, and collaboration. When it comes to infrastructure, we think about digital systems and physical facilities. When it comes to regulation, these are the rules or laws by governments or other authoritative bodies that can help support the principles of circularity. In terms of education, this is knowledge, skills, and values that can help people implement the activities that are required to make a circular economy a reality. When it comes to finance, this refers to capital from both public and private sources. When it comes to innovation, this looks at new products, services, ideas, or methods that support circularity. And finally, collaboration. This involves, as all of us we are experiencing, working with different actors across different industries and the whole value chain towards a common goal. And in this paper, when we define the 6 secrets of circularity, we also provide some examples from the Asia Pacific region. So some examples in terms of regulation are extended producer responsibility, or EPR, minimal recycled content. In terms of finance, there's green financing frameworks and blue and green loans. And when it comes to infrastructure, this entails smart waste management, digital infrastructure, and integrated waste sorting recycling facilities. These are just a few of the examples we highlight in the paper, but of course, with the Asia Pacific region being so big and diverse, there are many examples that we can pull from that demonstrate how these 6 secrets really drive circularity. Now, how do the 6 secrets unlock circularity? What you'll see is in this paper, we present a framework for what could be the way forward for the Asia Pacific region to drive circularity and achieve this vision. So the way this framework what this framework is trying to illustrate is that we see that businesses are a collective engine that can provide circular products and services to meet the needs of society. And achieving circularity requires businesses to take a life cycle approach in planning and making the necessary interventions from resource extraction all the way to end of life. By establishing infrastructure, regulation, education, finance, innovation, collaboration between all the actors, this is the secret to strengthening the ability for companies to implement circular activities at different parts of the life cycle of goods and services. Now, the drivers of circularity I just mentioned are analogous to the roots of a tree that draw on support from government policies and institutions. And finally, through all the support from the roots of the tree, the trunk of businesses, this can yield final circular products and services from businesses that can help support in achieving this, the Sustainable Development Goals. So I talked about what the 6 secrets of circularity are and what could be the way forward. But now I'd like to share with you some of the key findings we had about the landscape of circular economy policies in the Asia Pacific region. How are we doing with regards to policies? So from our research, in the 79 policies that we identified, we saw that the East and Northeast Asia are lead into the number of different policies implemented, followed by Southeast Asia, the Pacific, South and Southwest Asia, and North and Central Asia. Now, all of these different policies are at different levels of maturity, as you can see in the pie chart on the right side. So the different stages of maturity of all these policies are in early stage, in scoping, in development, call to action, roadmaps, operational strategies, and actual policies implemented, such as regulations or laws that are well enforced. From our review of the Asia Pacific region, at least more than 1/3 of the policy are actual policies, the highest level of maturity, followed by operational strategies and roadmaps. And so what we see that a major barrier that confronts the Asia Pacific region is a lack of concrete policies, particularly those aimed at waste management. There's a lot of vision, roadmaps, but in terms of real policies that lead to action, there's a need for more of these in order to make circularity a reality. Now, in the policies we reviewed, these are the ones that exist, but there are actually more ambitious policies that could be considered that have been implemented in places outside the Asia Pacific region. So one example is the right to repair, and this is an instrument that aims to encourage more sustainable consumption by improving product repair and reuse both within and outside the legal warranty. And we've seen this implemented in France and the United Kingdom over the past few years. Another more ambitious policy is production stage taxes. So this looks at implementing taxes on virgin raw materials. So one example is in the United Kingdom, there's a tax on every ton of packaging that contains less than 30% recycled plastics. And finally, there's use stage tax relief, which is an incentive for people to do more repair and reuse of products. So we saw that in the Netherlands, Austria, and Sweden, they have a reduced value-added tax rate on repairs for bicycle, shoes, textiles, and leather products. So I've talked enough about policies, but how are businesses doing in terms of circularity? There are a lot of different businesses that are doing circular activities, and what we tried to do in this paper is give some real examples and with a good level of detail of bigger businesses that have been operating in different parts of the Asia Pacific region to implement circularity. And so these 7 companies here, we did some data collection and we had some interviews with some of these companies in order to understand what was their journey, what did they actually accomplish in circularity, and what were the challenges they face. And so when it comes to circularity, the ways we looked at this was what are they doing in terms of resource efficiency, supply chain management, and business model and product design innovation. So when it comes to resource efficiency, several of these companies are using more recycled material, reducing energy and water use and waste, and also recycling their waste streams. In terms of supply chain management, we see that these companies are selecting more sustainable suppliers, setting mid-term and long-term environmental targets. And finally, when it comes to business model and product design innovation, we see that these companies are creating circular economy strategies and internal working groups and committees that use remote control systems, and they are designing products for recyclability as well as increasing the number of reusable and refillable products that are available and using within the companies themselves. Now, these achievements did not happen overnight. There was a lot of work that took place, and this is even for the bigger companies that have resources. So you can imagine it would be even tougher for small and medium enterprises. But we tried to identify the key challenges they face so that others can learn from these lessons and see how they can move forward. So some of the key issues we identified was high initial investment and upfront costs. So transitioning to circular practices often requires substantial initial investments, and these upfront costs may impose a barrier for many businesses, especially the smaller size ones. There are also supply chain operational challenges. So sourcing raw materials from suppliers who do follow sustainable practices can complicate supply chain management and logistics. And suppliers often operate under different environmental regulations and sustainability standards. We saw that another challenge was ambiguity in definitions and requirements. And this really is about just the varying definitions and requirements that can create barriers for businesses who are trying to implement circular initiatives, particularly in global supply chain. And the lack of standardization can create confusion and difficulty for producers trying to meet multiple sets of requirements. So, I want to wrap up this presentation by talking about what is the next frontier for circularity in the Asia Pacific region. So again, I present to you here the 6 secrets of circularity of infrastructure, regulation, education, finance, innovation, and collaboration. And based on our research and some of the different actors we've engaged with, if we want to be ambitious about bringing circularity to reality, we looked at what could be the future state that would be ideal for circular economy future in the region. So in terms of infrastructure, physical and digital infrastructure is established to facilitate waste prevention and product reuse and treatment of valuable waste streams. When it comes to regulations, countries would ideally have implemented regulations that promote circular practices, and regulations are well enforced. In terms of education, the principles of the circular economy would have become fundamental component of national education systems, and workforce training across generations of the population. In terms of financing, governments would be creating market conditions that provide public sources of financing to stimulate private investment and circular economy activities that offer both financial and development returns. In terms of innovation, products and services that support the circular flow of materials and energy and regenerate nature are deployed and adopted. And finally, when it comes to collaboration, we would hope that all stakeholders across industries and supply chain in both the public and private sectors share a common goal of scaling up circularity and establishing partnerships with tangible outcomes. So finally, if we want to achieve this ambitious vision for the next frontier of circularity, different actors can do a variety of activities to make this vision a reality. So what can governments do? Governments can help create a level policy playing field. They can help adjust the economics to be in favor of circularity as opposed to a linear production system. Governments can also improve their enforcement of regulation and support circular activities that are higher in the waste hierarchy, such as reducing and repairing. Right now, a lot of circularity attention has been focused on the downstream side, looking at waste management and recycling. Now, what can businesses do? Businesses have already been doing a lot, but there's always more that can be done if you want to achieve this vision and make Asia Pacific the leader in circular economy in the world. And so businesses can undertake a systemic diagnostic and create strategy with buy-in from top management. They can establish company steering committee forums, like the other case studies we looked at, that helped set the stage for what circular economy would look like for that company and what value do certain principles of the circular economy add to that particular company or industry. And what's important is to also learn from successful cases and replicate what worked well. And finally, what can industry associations and networks do? So these associations can promote circular economy among similar business types. These associations can also engage governments collectively to advocate for action and change. And one thing that can be quite helpful is to create an online library of circular economy success stories and solutions from the Asia Pacific region. And finally, it's also important to collect and communicate the not so successful circularity stories. Everything does require some level of trial and error. And if we want to rapidly accelerate this transition, then there's a need to learn from the not so successful case studies and stories. And this is obviously hard for companies to communicate because companies always want to share what worked out well and show success. But there could be a way to have safe discussion spaces on what did not work, and we could learn from that so that other companies who want to become circular do not repeat those practices that did not go well. So thank you all today for having me here. It's been my pride and privilege to share the insight from the research my colleagues and I from UNSCAP conducted. And so we hope this fuels some discussion in the panel discussion coming up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pia, for setting the scene. I'll request you to stay online towards the end. If there are some questions which are addressed to you, we'll be requesting your feedback on it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Pia, while elaborating upon the 6 key drivers of circularity and how these drivers, they can actually take us to a circular economy, some of the best practices from other parts of the world, and what can be done in Asia Pacific, has set the scene for our discussion. And one thing that is quite important coming up from his talk, that like climate change, circular economy, it's a multidimensional and a multidisciplinary subject, and we require collaboration of different actors and different stakeholders in order to achieve the objectives of circular economy. And that's what is reflected in the panel today. I have a very distinguished panelist to discuss on this subject, from a former member of parliamentarian to the business leaders and representatives, academicians, and to civil society organization and experts. So I'll be coming to each one of you for initial remarks for 5 minutes. The colleagues sitting there, they would be telling us about the time. And once we have this round of initial comments, we'll be able to then go for the second round and then take questions. And let me start from one of the distinguished panelists here who's representing academia, Ms. Pratagya Bishal, Kathmandu University School of Management, Nepal. So ma'am, one of the drivers that Dr. Pia, he informed us is education. You are representing a very important university in Nepal. Do you think that in our business schools, the concept of circular economy that is being taught and told, and the students, they have interest in it, and it is becoming some sort of an emerging field in the academia and among business students, are still lot needs to be done on it. So your reflection on it.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Pratigya Bishal from Kathmandu University School of Management Policy Lab. It's a university think tank. So one of my very recent research was with World Trade Organization, and that was on trade sustainability of locally produced reusable sanitary pads, incorporating a socio-cultural dimension in Nepal. So coming back to the questions, I think South Asia unique cultural and economic landscape provide significant opportunities for circular economy in fields like agriculture waste management, textile recycling, and e-waste recycling. So basically, my research highlights on how an eco-friendly menstrual product can contribute to, address plastic waste, at the same time empower the local economies and also promote menstrual equity. So if we see the regular sanitary pads, it contains almost 90% of the plastic. But there are biodegradable sanitary pads that's being produced in some of the remote area of Nepal as well. And also these are done by the local organizations, that is facilitated by the local government. Mainly women cooperatives are taking such kind of leads. So, and menstrual hygiene is a big stigma in our country. And at the same time, this is also tackling this sort of issues as well. So I think the transition in circular business model is slowed down by a significant skills gap in the workforce. Like many workers lack technical expertise in the area like material science, product redesign, system thinking, and advanced technologies such as sorting, material recovery techniques and all. And to address this, I think government and industries can focus on the training and education initiatives. I would say like academic intervention. There should be a curriculum, there should be a design of a curricula in such a way that the concept of circular economy should be there. These things are being missed in context of Nepal, and partnership between industry and academia can create a specialized course and research centers. At the same time, I think innovation lab focusing on circular solutions like that can provide a hands-on experience for the workers, and government can also sponsor some targeted training programs and all. Having said that, these are all the multi-stakeholder collaboration. Business, academia, policymakers, and NGOs are key in making this sort of initiatives very impactful. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bashal, for highlighting the importance of collaboration and a multi-stakeholder tasking. I'll come to Dr. Khanal towards the end of this round. I would like to sum it up, listening to all the discussion, and then as a policymaker, as a former legislator, highlight upon some of the issues. So let me go to Dr. Nanda. Dr. Nanda, you heard from our colleague in Bangkok. I know you are an energy specialist and policy formulator as well as a policy advocate. Now, the circularity, when we're talking of the whole circularity approach, I like to listen from you, but also from the perspective of energy conservation. We had been discussing the CBAM and its implication. So do you think that by adopting a circularity approach, the businesses, they can be better equipped for CBAM and other non-tariff trade barriers that may be coming up in the coming years?
Thank you, Abid. This circular economy, this discussion in environmental discourse is relatively new, but not so new also. At least for a couple of decades we have been talking about this. But over this couple of decades, what we have achieved? You know, I see a few fellow Bengalis sitting. There is an idiom in Bengali, bhaber ghare churi. It means that you are emphasizing on cosmetics, rituals, but you have forgotten the spirit. You know, so in many ways we have forgotten the spirit. That why we talk about resource efficiency, circular economy. Because when I look at the data, data doesn't support. And then, you know, this forgetting the spirit, you look at the domestic material consumption of, say, US, you will find that between 1980 and now, it has come down by kind of about 10%. So you might say this is an improvement. You know, resource efficiency has been there, so that must be because of, you know, reduction of waste or circularity in motion. But if you look at the resource footprint, material footprint, it tells a different story. Because what is happening, because of indirect consumption that might be coming through China or other countries, it's actually gone up by 50%. So material resource consumption in developed countries like US has gone up by 50%. That is one bad side, but the good side of the story is that if you compare US and Europe, material footprint in Europe is almost half of that is US. So is it possible to have reasonably good living standard lifestyle with much less resource use? That is something that we as developing countries need to understand. How do we do it? I don't have data for all South Asian countries, but you know, as of now, domestic material consumption of US and China are almost equal. But that also hides one picture because domestic material consumption, much of that is happening in China, is indirectly going to other countries, so they are not responsible for final consumption of all that material. So that is another thing that we have to keep in mind. In India, and I expect in other South Asian countries it will be much lesser. You know, in India, resource consumption is about 20 to 25% of that of China as of now. That is because we don't have much of manufacturing sector. But I come back to that US and Europe and comparison. The most important part that we have to emphasize is the lifestyle. You know, unless we are willing to make some compromise on lifestyle, unless we talk about, you know, sacrificing some convenience, some comfort. I mean, you're talking about how school children, I was remembering what I see. Children are very much, if you talk to them, they are very, you know, familiar with this concept, environmental circular. But I see children, instead of carrying drinking water from home, you know, they're buying bottled water from shops, you know, on a daily basis. So this, of course, is not somehow percolating down to the level it should happen. But one aspect I would like to mention, that industry, business to business, you know, collaboration and knowledge transfer awareness building is very important because I was part of implementing a resource efficiency project when I was in TERI. To give an example, a company, car company wants metal sheet to be used and cut into some bigger pieces, and part of it is being wasted as like, wasted sheets. Now we found that another company, they also need metal sheet, but they not a big size metal sheet because they need small, like coin-like sheets to be used in their production. Now what has been wasted by one company, instead of going to waste field, that can go directly to them as input. Now this knowledge transfer is very important. And the same thing we found that like paint shop of a car factory. When you do spray painting, lot of paint is wasted around, and that you directly send to landfill and waste. You can send that to again back to the paint companies. They can reprocess it without much of cost. So all these initiatives can be taken to reduce your material footprint. But I would emphasize, lifestyle is the most important part, and that will be good for all of us health-wise also. Thank you.
Thank you, Nanda. And taking your point to Ms. Davyani Hari, Senior Director, Center for Responsible Business India, who has joined us virtually. Ma'am, Dr. Nanda, he emphasized on this knowledge sharing among businesses so that efficient resource material, efficient use of material can be actually promoted. I was wondering, your Center for Responsible Business, do you think it's pragmatic and possible? And if it's possible, what sort of hurdles or challenges are you facing in it? And I would also like you to comment on Dr. Pia's point. One of the drivers that he mentioned was this availability of finances for businesses. So if you can highlight on these two aspects for us, please.
Opportunity, and thank you for the previous speakers, because I think some very important points and good context set up. I think to the point of industrial symbiosis collaboration, absolutely, and we do see it happening as well. See, from businesses, if we show them the opportunity, right, any waste that they are able to utilize, that they are able to reuse, is additional income for them. And we do see that a lot of our experiences in the textile sector. So we do see that waste from one industry, businesses are beginning to explore on how they can reuse, how they can, in fact, in circularity, we see a lot of material from other, like we are seeing agri waste also being used to convert to fiber and then create it into fashion. So that kind of symbiosis we are seeing. We are also seeing that textile waste that is being generated, especially at the pre-consumption phase where it's easier to handle, is being used for upcycling, recycling, creating livelihood opportunities. When we are looking at wastewater management, we are also seeing collaboration between municipalities and industry at times, where the industry actually uses the wastewater from municipalities. It's much easier for them to treat, and the municipality has an additional stream of income. So there definitely are a lot of opportunities. However, there is a need, and I think Dr. Pia touched upon it as well, that how do we communicate, how do we ease the flow of communication knowledge, that what is available, how do we link the resources, the waste of one industry is resource for another. So sometimes it needs research, sometimes it needs a simple connection, a platform which says that so much is available and could be used. Sometimes it needs, proper pricing, because you could create business models around utilizing waste, but if you're not sure of how much of it is being generated, at what price it can be accessed, how it can be treated, then those are the kind of hurdles that we see that do get created. In fact, a lot of upcycling, recycling businesses, their major challenge is having access to continuous stream of resources. So that's a challenge I think that needs to be addressed, where sometimes governments can also play a role. If at city level waste, etc., is being collected, I think there are different ways in which businesses can collaborate, businesses and governments can collaborate, platforms can come in. If we look at solutions like reverse resources, which look at the value chain in the textile sector and measure waste, and they connect the waste generator to the waste user. So I think those kind of solutions are very much needed. So that is one. I think you also touched upon the issue of finance. Now, without finance, any discourse on sustainability, any discourse on circularity, we will not get very far, because we can create the awareness amongst businesses, we can show them solutions, but unless there is finance, that is unlocked. And what happens is, while we are seeing climate finance flowing in, we are seeing green finance flowing in, I don't think we particularly have financial solutions for circularity. And if we take a step back, why is it that we are not able to see that? I think, Pia, you touched upon this in your presentation. We don't have common terminology. Now, if I'm a financier, a taxonomy would be very helpful to me. What is a circular business model? Right? What are the risks associated with it? What is it that we are financing? What are the kind of returns that we can look for? How do I assess a business that is offering circularity? So I think, first of all, before we look at the financial solutions, we have to look at the capacity building within the financial sector as well, and demystifying it for them a little bit. There are some banks, I remember in Italy, one of the banks actually had loan products for circularity. If you look at the Indian context, the Small Industries Development Bank of India, it's a development bank that focuses on SMEs, is actually looking at waste management entrepreneurs, is looking at greener mobility, is introducing the words on circularity. So here I think government again plays a very important role on defining what circularity means, what those business models are, and sort of channelizing or encouraging finance towards that. I think that is something that is needed. And also we need to look at innovative financing products, because if we look at traditional products with the collateral requirements, that also becomes a challenge both for businesses, and there is not much uptake then. So I think those are a few things that we should look at when it comes to financing. When we looked at financing in, let's say, energy efficiency, or we looked at financing for renewable energy, there was a lot of capacity building that was done. There was a lot of capacity building for financial institutions that was done, and it was simplified. So I think a similar approach towards circularity would definitely be needed, but at the same time, we also have to relook at the kind of financing products that are available. Also, ease of financing. Sometimes you have the product, sometimes you have the financial institution, but it is not that easy to access. And when you're talking about financing, you're looking at financing across the value chain. Circularity means that we need collaboration across the value chains. It can't be a product that is just speaking to large organizations with good books. We are looking at small and medium scale enterprises. We are looking at, sole proprietorships, women-led enterprises. So you need to start unlocking finance. And the other thing which we always have to look at, and I think here some real innovation is needed, that when we involve the informal sector into this whole conversation, because the informal sector in our economies remains a very important part of circular discussions. How can we unlock better financing? How can we look at better working conditions? How can we look at integrating them, with their strengths into the formal systems, is a question that we need to address. I'd like to stop.
Thank you, and especially for highlighting the importance of informal sector and supporting the informal sector, bringing informal sector into mainstream. That brings me to Ms. Prakarti Menali, who is co-founder of Shakti Milan Nepal. Now, Prakarti, Dr. Pia had already emphasized the importance of innovation, and I know that through your excellent work, you have been using innovation to produce the products that you are producing from recycled and material. Some of the challenges and opportunities that are discussed here. So you being entrepreneur and having a first-hand experience of being in the circularity businesses, we wanted to learn from your experiences, whether lack of finances was a challenge, whether lack of information and this informal sector not being mainstreamed was a challenge, and how were you able to actually create market for the products that you are producing. So some reflection on your own journey, please.
Thank you so much for the question. Actually, I started my first business back in 2014, so it's been 10 years. I've been involved in upcycle business. We make bags made out of waste rice sack. And the whole philosophy of the business is to produce high quality, durable, upcycled products employing women. So our business is always around this concept of, bringing the most disadvantaged, socially disadvantaged community, the women, into the production process. And while also doing a little bit of environmental justice from our business. So the whole, if I put it in a philosophical term, then it's all about bringing this social justice and environmental justice together. And we are celebrating a decade-long entrepreneurship journey in 2024. So to talk about the opportunities, I would see there's only opportunities, because we all need to be aware where the world is heading towards. We all are, every country, it's not the talk of one country, it's the talk of the whole world. Everybody is talking about the sustainability. And one thing for sure is, if you cannot change according to the market dynamics, then you have to change yourself, or this market will wipe you out from the existence. So we have already seen it in terms of, 100 years plus legacy carrying businesses are getting out of the market because they are not changing according to what market is demanding. So this is the future. This is the idea of the 21st century. And I want to see a lot of opportunity if somebody is trying to do a circular business. But saying all these things, these are all very philosophical sometimes, but when you really work as a producer, it is not that easy to take a decision. Why would a producer would opt for the circular options if there is no incentive? So we really need to think about how can we incentivize the businesses to do the circular business. And as I did this business for last 10 years, what I have really understood is, majority of us are a consumer. If I ask in this room how many of you are a producer, then a very few of us are a producer. A lot of us, we are consumer in one way or the other. And when we really when I really look into my storeroom, I have got the product full of the stock for last 10 years. So the market is never settling in an equilibrium. The supply is always more than the demand. And the waste that we are talking, this is the talk of the whole world. How can we recycle the waste? So the waste is not just the production from the consumption, but waste is also the production from the overproduction that is being produced by the producers. So it's all about, ultimately it's about how can we change the mindset, not just about the producer, but of the consumer. Because it's ultimately, there's few questions. Because when it comes to the information and the knowledge economy, all of us are looking for the citation. And when we are looking for the information, we always go for the source of the information. But the clothes that we are wearing right now, we are not asking the source of the material. Where is this material coming from? And how is this material is going to contribute in the economy? So these are, fundamental, very important questions that comes as a responsibility as the consumer. So ultimately, if we really want to make this circular economy a big success, the responsibility from the producers and the mindset, the mindful consumption, as Nitya sir just mentioned, the mindful consumption from the consumer, that is also very, very important. And if I reflect back 10 years, the market has changed a lot. We are exporting our product to Germany, but now in Nepal itself, a lot of people are interested to buy the upcycle product. So I have seen a lot of opportunities. And to talk about the challenges, I would say, definitely the mindset. It's very niche market is very limited. So the more people, if more people are educated on this topic, why we need to opt for the circular economy, then I think the market is bigger.
Well, thank you, and especially for highlighting sustainable consumption and production and role of consumers in promoting circular economy as well. And that brings me to the Dr. Khanal, former MP, former member of Planning Commission, and a renowned macroeconomist and development policy researcher in Nepal. Sir, I would like to actually, you listened to our discussion and you wear multiple hats. Now, the role of legislators and the role of policymakers in improved regulations and laws, as Dr. Pia mentioned, one of the drivers of circular economy, but also the role of bureaucrats and institutions like Planning Commission in planning the whole economy and where circular economy gets its place in this, and its impacts on human development. So these are some of the areas where one would like to get your reflection based on some of the interventions which are made here.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start with some sort of some form of initiatives that are going on in the context of Nepal. For instance, from policy standpoint, programs and some sort of some form of legal regulatory management and all that. I was going through various initiatives. First of all, there are probably from the point of view of circular economy 3 to 4 X and strategies. That one, of course, is because, for instance, waste management that exclusively is authorized to local bodies, municipalities. Therefore, the Local Government Operation Act 2017, that also provisions how you enhance one way or the other the circular economy. In other words, efficiency in resource use, at the same time how to enhance the sustainability, and in that also particularly the focus on water waste management, in that promoting recycling industries and all that. At the same time, we have this national urban development strategy developed by government. At the same time, we have Environmental Protection Act 2019 and relatively old, the Solid Waste Management Act 2011, which has been updated based on the Local Governance Act. That is one part. And then second part is that at least in the budget, as that is practiced in many parts of the world, that we have climate and environment related separate budget in which the resources are allocated, linking with the program. At the same time, there are priority and the focus is on largely the kind of climate crisis that Nepal faces, the kind of environmental problems that Nepal faces in terms of program priority, policies, strategies. That is there. And at the practical level, as I think that the way the biodiversity loss, the pollution problem that is aggravating in Nepal, and which is very much linked to disturbance in the ecosystem, services and all that. The major focus has been on waste, management. In that also some sort of segregation attempts are there. And as I was going through the data, at least 30% of the municipalities now, they have this recycling industries and some sort of, changes and improvements, especially waste management. At the same time, efforts to promote recycling industries in Kathmandu municipality is there. Having said this, I think the kind of, broader, policy strategy that is needed, especially from the standpoint of circular economy, that is in terms of, policies, programs. At the same time, you have to induce, especially the private sector, and you have to introduce, as there were references earlier also, especially develop, the business model where the circular economy is embedded, and that sort of focus and a priority, and especially to ensure that the biodiversity loss, pollution, and the mismanagement of the waste, that is a bigger problem. Still, Nepal confronts, and what I think is that as many countries, including South Asia, and especially I was saying the Southeast Asian countries where they have, one sort of regional framework, and in that they have tried to align trade policies with the circular economy. At the same time, they have also attempted, for instance, to harmonize and standardize and mutually recognize the circular products and services. That I think some sort of more regional, level efforts are necessary. At the same time, the kind of challenges, for instance, earlier bigger investment, that means more funding. At the same time, the kind of incentive structure through taxes, financing facilities. At the same time, the market linkages that is there. I think more priority in terms of at the policy level. At the same time, various incentive structure within the fiscal system, and more importantly, the whole idea of the development strategy or approach that should be developed in a way that embeds the circular economy, approach and a system. I think that sort of priority that is essential. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kanal, for very aptly linking various policy and regulatory requirements which are required to promote circular economy, and highlighting some of the work that Nepal is already doing on it. We started about 10 minutes late. I'll like to have ample time for question, answer, and discussion. But before that, if I can go for a rapid fire round, just 2 minutes each, and then I'll open up the floor for your interventions and your questions. Dr. P, I'll come to you towards the end after listening to all of the intervention. Then I'll ask you to sum it up. Dr. Nanda, can you try to give me in 2 minutes what needs to be done to bring this informal sector into mainstream in order to promote this circular economy? So any suggestion, any recommendation that you would like to give so that the organizers of this forum, they can collate and they can try disseminating it to the high-ups?
I know about India, there has been a lot of progress in this, and that has happened with the help of NGOs. So government, NGO, business and informal sector partnership, that has helped to some extent. and that often come as a surprise that it could be done. For example, we have in some sector electronic goods, that extended producer responsibility. That was not working in the field because the private companies finding it quite expensive to collect and all. Then we found that unless you involve those informal players, you will not be able to manage. The economics behind that will not help. So those who are selling electronic goods after use as second hand, if you give to company, you will get very little money. But if you give it to informal collectors, you get more money. So if you ignore that, economics behind it, it will not work. And that was working only because the informal sector is there. But, one has to also keep in mind that some of the informal, processors, they were working in a very, in a way which was very hazardous to the people who are working in informal sector. So this can be done, this should be done, but a lot of things need to be taken care of. So the partnership is important.
Thank you. The partnership is important, and the conditions of work at informal sector needs to be improved. Ms. Hari, you are Senior Director of Center for Responsible Business. Wanted to get your take on this EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility, and how your center is trying to promote this EPR. In 2 minutes, please.
Extended producer responsibility we already have in the electronic sector and plastics, and I think there are a lot of learnings from us. It's being discussed in the textile sector. It is no doubt a very powerful policy mechanism, a policy tool to look at collection, recycling, reducing the hazard. But I think there are learnings that we need to incorporate. One, any sort of EPR regulation needs to be coupled and supported with very strong collection mechanisms, right? Because take back, collection, getting it to the right channels, and the informal sector there becomes very important. But I think also what becomes important is that what is the strategy on reuse, recycling and recovery? Because our earlier learnings, let's say from the electronic sector, was that while the e-waste collection was sorted, but then really what was the recovery rate from that? So if you look at EPR, then you have to be able to look at that you have very strong collection mechanisms. You are also having policies on what the recovery from those materials and how they are being reused. It has to be strong implementation because, it is a vast system. There can be gaps, there can be leakages in the system. And I would also say that, like I said, that we have the informal sector, which is a very important part. When we have EPR, we should recognize the models that are already working and integrate them into the system. For example, again, if I come back to the textile sector, we have NGOs, we have civil society organizations, which have spectacular models of collection and of redistribution or repurposing the textile waste that they collect. Now, an EPR should not disrupt these models. It should take into account how these are working and be able to partnership. And again, that would mean that the government needs to work with businesses, with the civil society, with the informal sector to make some of these mechanisms work. I think the intent of the EPR absolutely is spot on. But a lot of it lies in the implementation and achieving the spirit behind the EPR, which is the recovery of the material and reuse.
Thank you. Ms. Minali, you are also a producer. So while we heard from textile sector, which is of course large sector, but from the sector that you are representing, you think that this EPR is also applicable to you, and how are you dealing with it?
Thank you so much. This is a very interesting question because I think this is particularly aimed towards the bigger companies. That makes sense. But I represent a very small business. And actually we are working in the field of upcycling. So this itself means we are already putting some responsibility from our side. Yeah, so from our side, as I already told you, as a producer, I see, as a consumer, I look into my own wardrobe and I got to know that there's a lot of clothes that I'm not going to wear. So it's full of things that, it's unused things that I'm never going to use. And as a producer, when I look into my stock room for last 10 years, it's the product full of half of this room is full of products that I'm not able to sell. So the question for me is where to dump this product. And as I told you, our philosophy was also about, not just about the environmental perspective, but also how can we do something that get these or the products to the needy people. So what we are doing is we have started the match bag, that we are giving away these bags to the rural part of Nepal. And the fact is that we still have 250 million children out of school. We have a lot of, I don't know, millions or billions people sleep hungry. So that is also one of the very staggering figures. So how can a business do the responsible business? And as we are talking about this transitioning to the circular economy, it's not happening in like 2 or 5 years or 10 years. Maybe can we do some social justice to the people who are marginalized? As a producer, that could also be one of the solutions for until this transition period. So that can do some kind of social and environmental perspective together. So that is where I think we are doing something on that.
Thank you, thank you. Ms. Vishal, you are also a consumer. So we talked a lot about producers, but all of us, we are consumers as well. So just wanted to get your reflection as a consumer, how your generation look at circular economy and how receptive it is towards using some of the norms of circular economy.
Yeah, you told that I'm also a consumer. Again, coming back to my research on trade sustainability of locally produced, reusable and biodegradable sanitary pads. These sort of initiatives is taken also in the very far west part of Nepal, and local government was facilitating this sort of initiative, but people were very skeptical in using such kind of products. Coming back to the menstrual product again, people were very reluctant with what sort of scissors is used while manufacturing this sort of product, because coming to the menstrual product, optimum hygiene is required, So I think awareness program is crucial for this sort of things to change the mindset, first of all. At the same time, incentivized policy is also required, tax break for the biodegradable products or eco-friendly products and all. And at the same time, we have very inadequate infrastructure as well. So these sort of things should be taken care. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Khanal, again, you listened to all of them. And my question to you for this round is that what sort of regulatory or policy support can be provided to promote the concepts of circular economy? And after you, I'll go to Dr. Priya.
Thank you. I think one of the most important thing, apart from the laws, policies, programs and all that, and the models at your disposal, the critical part is regulation, for instance. The classic example can be of plastic in Nepal. For instance, since last many years, we try to replace plastic, but we have not been successful. At the same time, the kind of progress that would have been made in the areas of waste management, and more so on the recycling industry, that has not taken place. Therefore, based on the other countries' experience, for instance, India, Bangladesh, and other countries' experience, including Southeast Asian countries, the most important thing, and European countries, most important thing is that the regulatory enforcement, the enforcement of the regulatory system that is important. At the same time, for instance, in European countries, they have this right to repair, for instance, if you purchase certain things. At the same time, there were references on the EPR, for instance, the implementation of EPR, for instance, in the business model, and more so at the large scale. That what I think is that the kind of critical gaps that are there at the act level, policy program level, that is one area. But importantly, what is needed is that there should be a strong enforcement mechanism and system, with the premises that the circular economy that is promoted and enhanced, with the collaboration of private sector, at the same time government, state sector, and the way the NGOs, some professionals that are coming up, to promote circular economy, or the producing the circular economy based products. I think from the larger circular economy standpoint view, regulatory system enforcement and fulfillment of critical gaps in those, that is critically important. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Khanal. Dr. Pia, thanks for very patiently listening to all this discussion. Just wanted to get some of your final remarks before we open the floor for some interventions and questions.
Sure. No, thank you. It's been wonderful hearing everyone's thoughts based on their experiences and what could be possible. I think one thing that really stuck out to me was the word lifestyle. I heard this earlier, and I always find it interesting. We often blame governments and businesses for the issues, or we expect them to solve our problems for us. But actually, we as citizens, as consumers, we have the power to make these changes by changing our lifestyles. And the question is how much are we willing to sacrifice, right, and to achieve the principles of circularity? I think if we can figure out what is that level of adjustment, how much comfort we are willing to give away and such, that without compromising our basic needs, I think that could be the way forward to galvanize support at the citizen level to make circularity happen. So we do have the power. Once our consumption patterns change by choice, then this will also influence companies, what they decide to produce, what they will not produce, and in terms of how governments have to respond to our needs. So I think lifestyle is a very important factor that doesn't get enough attention to make circularity happen. We often think about just governments and business, but people really matter, and we can be agents of change.
Thank you, Dr. P. And of course, change starts from from an individual and from our own self. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you listened to these excellent interventions. Now, the floor is open for your brief interventions, questions. We will collect few questions and intervention, and then I'll come to the panelists. I have Professor Rehman Subhan first, if the mic can be given there, and then to gentlemen at the back.
Forgive me if this has already been brought up, but it strikes me that in South Asia, at the what we call the Pheriwala level, we've been practicing the circular economy for decades, if not centuries. And virtually everything that is there is recycled. Now, the problem is it is done in fairly basic, primitive, and in many ways highly unhygienic conditions. Now, I don't know if there has been any agenda of policy, or there has been also technological interventions, and perhaps you can address this, to see whether this itself, this process, which provides livelihood also to hundreds of thousands of the poorest people can in fact be effectively brought into the mainstream of sustaining a circular economy through various forms of technological innovation, various forms of regulatory hygienic interventions, and also then injection of financing and marketing interventions into this process. I don't know, in fact, whether this has become part of the literature and research while we are talking of circular economy. It would certainly, for those of us who have had everything that we produce circulated, this is something which you think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Saab, for raising this very important point. Yes, gentleman at the back.
Namaste. I'm Menuka Karki. I'm a researcher. I have also researched about solid waste management in Kathmandu Valley in 2012, using around 1,200 households. So, as per my research findings, since we are talking about financing is a big challenge, I think, and we have been talking about business, I think we have to, if we look at 3R, reduce, reuse, recycle, I think we have to start with household level, because that's where we can reduce the waste at the most cost-effective way. If we, since my research was in Nepal, so I can point out that in Solid Waste Management Act, it says that private sector can collect fee for waste collection, but it does not say how, in what unit. And if we look at international practices, the waste is always collected by volume or unit, and that's the flaw in Nepal. We don't have penalty nor incentive to reduce the waste, and so I think that could be one point. Another is we found within the Kathmandu Valley also, Bhaktapur has a model example of best solid waste management, and that is happening by a strong incentive. They have both incentive and ownership, because in 2012 what I found is 80% were local individuals who are living there for generations, and they also, almost each household run a small shop, and it's a very tourist attractive city, and so they have incentive to keep the city clean. So I think at the end, my conclusion is I think there should be some incentive embedded in the policy so that either penalty or incentive, because we always respond to incentives. So I think that's my findings. Thank you.
Thank you. The gentleman at the back.
All right. Hi, I'm Aman Pant. Thank you to everyone for your insights and thoughts. I have a question and then followed by some thoughts of myself. The question to Dr. Pia in regards to the companies you mentioned on your research finding. There's probably more details in the full report, but I'm curious, how did the research actually measure the circularity of the business models of the private companies? Is there an index, or are there some stats you could share? I'm also asking this because a couple of companies you mentioned are under scrutiny for greenwashing in other parts of the world. So just curious on that. Next, I just want to unpack a little bit to see how did we actually get here. So at the root of this non-circular economic system we see today, if I may put it that way, is an economic system which is religiously obsessed with the idea of growth, without really thinking about growing how, growing for who, growing where. It's a little funny because this flight of the idea of economic growth takes place in such a plane that once it takes off, there's not really any provisions for how to land, or there's no systemic ideas of how do we land this plane that takes off, the plane of idea of economic growth. So that has resulted into what we see today, very frantic and highly and a high tension consumer society that is obsessed with exponential growth. So perhaps, as an economist myself also, perhaps it also ties a little bit to the education secret you brought up. Perhaps it's time we go back to the fundamentals of our economic system. Perhaps we go back to economics 101 and learn, and maybe start relearning about designing systems that can value or that can measure economic value in some other ways than growth itself. Perhaps we can look into creating economic systems that values economies that thrive and not only economies that grow. And I think if we are able to learn and relearn this, the policies, incentives that you guys mentioned will follow. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question or comment? So, Dr. Pia, if I can start from you.
Sure, absolutely. I'll answer the gentleman's question and comments, but first I'd like to commend you for talking about rethinking the way we think about economics. I think, is it safe to assume that you read Kate Raworth's book on donut economics? It's one of my favorite books, and I think this is a much larger discussion that goes beyond the circular economy. But yes, our addiction to growth and GDP, this is, one of the reasons why the linear economy is still around, and circularity would shift all that. And trying to make this transition to circularity it's disruptive. We're changing something that's been around for a long time. And so I do agree that why are we measuring progress in terms of growth? How about just looking at the way we thrive? And that's what I like about the donut economics framework that looks at the sweet spot between our environmental ceiling and our social foundation. Okay? Now, to answer your question specifically about the research that was conducted about the companies we showcased were actually members of the UN SCAP Sustainable Business Network. And based on time limitation and access to resources, we chose to select these companies based on how available they were to provide information, how much public information they had. So in the public information we reviewed, we couldn't find any specific indicators about how they measure circularity, but certain companies provide numbers about how much waste and water they reduce, what type of recycled content they had in their products, and what we tried to emphasize and what were the actions that they took, not necessarily measure comparatively against each company about their level of circularity. So I think that's something that's definitely missing from the report. At the same time, again, those companies that were featured, they're meant to be just cases of just big companies that have taken action. And within the SCAP Sustainable Business Network, I am sure there are loads of many other companies that have done circularity. Some of them do not have this information publicly available online. So I hope that answers your question. Happy to talk more about this separately if you'd like.
Thank you, Dr. Pia. Ms. Sari, would you like to take any of the questions that is asked?
Sure. So if I can take the first question that was asked, right, about our traditional models and our practices, I think I would like to state something. I mean, I also agree that we were traditionally very circular in our nature, behavior. But I think we should also acknowledge the fact that somewhere along the way we have lost a bit of it, and we have to rediscover it. And it is linked a bit to how we've seen growth, how consumption has changed, how globalization has happened, the access, our standard of living went up, the choice that was available to us. There is a multitude of factors. So I think what one we should recognize is that we absolutely have to rediscover, but we should acknowledge that we've lost some of it. Right? So I think it's important because it was inherently in our nature, but it's not there, and that's why we are grappling with the challenges that we are. But having said that, there is absolute merit in keeping these traditional systems alive, but we should also realize that because of globalization, because of consumer awareness, because of the demands that sometimes we have from the global north, the engagement that happens between these different actors, right? The collection mechanisms, how you are dealing with recycling, how you are dealing with reuse, there's a lot more requirement on transparency and traceability. So we should, and I think Dr. Nanda touched upon it, that there is civil society that is working on integrating these systems into the new solutions that we are looking at, especially when it involves the informal sector, and that there is a focus on seeing how we can integrate these systems back, what sort of transparency we can bring in, but how we can also overlay things which we were not looking at earlier, which are good working conditions, which is hygiene, which is workplace safety, which were not traditionally things that were looked at. So as we look at building these models, I think it's important. It's also important to understand, and it is interesting, we had a session where we had the informal sector involved, right? And there is, because of this lack, I think the gentleman asked the question, right, that finance is not available, marketing is not available. What we see that communities, groups that traditionally were playing this role are not keen to do so anymore. They do not wish for their children to actually follow the same livelihood, right? So the onus is on us to making that livelihood much better. And what we are also seeing that through circular business models, through circular solutions, a lot of innovators, a lot of new businesses are actually connecting with artisans, are connecting with marginalized communities and trying to create models where they get more livelihood, where they get steady business, where there is a recognition to their work, they are able to market. So we are beginning to see those models, but yes, financing and marketing needs to be unlocked. But we also have to revisit some of these things which are working and understand what sort of customization, modernization, or some upgradation to these systems is needed. Technology, yes, but technology always has to be affordable and understood. I think not integrating them through technology is going to be a disservice because we are moving towards increasing digitalization, we are increasing towards technology solutions. But then it has to be, if we look at it, a simple thing, we have a lot of digital payments in the country now. And we've managed to get very informal segments onto it as well. Like I can go to a vegetable vendor today who's on the street and make a payment online. Right? So it needs that kind of investment, it needs that kind of hand-holding, it needs that kind of effort to really take it to everyone. So I think just the solution being available is not going to work. How do you make that solution work for everyone and affordable for everyone perhaps is going to be the key. I'm not sure if that answers his question, but just wanted to share some of these thoughts. And I think the lady also asked a question about incentives and disincentives. Absolutely. I just want to say that it is not just I think it's everyone. It's businesses, it's consumers, it's governments. Everyone has to play a role. Without consumers, we aren't getting very far. Yes, incentives and disincentives both play a role because segregation is a very sorry story. It's a regulation, but doesn't always happen at household level. So I think we need to enforce that much stronger. For businesses, yes, to adopt circularity, to integrate, to work with their supply chain. And I think governments can send a very strong message also simply through procurement practices. If they include circular products, if they include recycled content, that also sends a very strong message. So everybody has a role to play. I don't think we can afford to leave any stakeholder behind. I'd like to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Khanal, will you like to take up the question on Nepal solid waste management and some laws? The lady, she asked the question. Would you like to take the question by the lady on Nepal solid waste management?
Thank you. I would just generalize, perhaps. What I think based on my own experience and the kind of research and the practices that I see, first of all, it is necessary that more research probably that is needed and to identify how, that the circular economy could be promoted. In that probably the knowledge sharing, for instance, the education system, for instance, the introduction of, IT, technology, and many countries, they are probably using this blockchain technology, which has been quite popular in, promoting circular economy. That is why all those probably suggestions or the comments that have been made that are quite genuine and useful. More importantly, more research that has to be done, and I think some sort of framework, a circular economic framework that has to be established at the South Asian level, through which that apart from, efforts by the individual countries, some sort of, regional initiatives to promote circular economy should be there. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Nanda, will you like to take some of the questions, please?
Okay. Just to give an example, a company in a developed country donated a lot of computers to schools in a developing country. Because those computers became useless, nobody will use those computers in that country. So it has to go for waste processing, and that involves cost. Instead of doing that, they send it to developing country. Then they said, okay, we did some charity, So get some brownie points. For the developing country schools, they use it for 4-5 years, and still they get some value because there are cheap labor who do recycling, and so you get some price. In the process, of course, laborers suffer because in many processing plants, we don't even give them basic safety gears like mask and gloves. So, of course, we have to have labor safety laws, and we have to ensure that we implement them properly. So that is must. Two other things I would like to mention here, very important, that relentless pursuit of GDP has its limits. So yesterday I talked about we should not go for very high GDP target, because if you keep on changing your mobile phone version with some little features, and consumers should also buy them every year, otherwise their status would diminish. You are doing that, and recycling has its own limit. In many cases, you do what we call downcycling, not upcycling. So the value and use of metals or materials, they actually come down. So that is there. And in this context, it is important to understand the technology aspect, which I think we don't discuss much. You would be surprised to know that even for recycling computer waste, part of it, primary processing is done in India. Secondary or tertiary processing is not done in India, sent to Europe. Because there is technology of waste processing, and in that also there is technology denial, So if we do not get the technology, we will be involved only in primary processing of recycling. Secondary, tertiary processing would done by somebody else who will generate much of value and will be at the lower end of the value chain in processing industry as well. So this is something also we need to understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Pratigya, any take on some of the questions? Would you like to add anything?
I think all the answers from the audience has already been answered here. Questions has been answered. So I think, like Prakriti said, mindful consumptions. Along with mindful consumptions, I think by creating policies that make reuse and recycling easy and affordable, as I think PM mentioned, technology should also be affordable, if we use it. Government can turn circular practices into norm rather than, taking it as an extra effort, assuring sustainability and economic growth. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Menali?
I'll make it very short. Actually, I've been to one of the very ancient city of Nepal called Banepa 2 days back. And there I saw 3 people on the street, the cobblers. They are there, and alongside them were one seamstress who make the broken clothes. And I love this scenario. We are talking about this circular economy, and now Kathmandu does not have these cobblers on the road. We really want talking about the repair and all that. Patagonia, we're talking about Patagonia, and they make such a big stories that they repair and they are contributing to the circular economy. But these people who were there on the roadside, they are displaced. So while we're talking about anything, any development or any development model, that should not displace this underprivileged, socially disadvantaged communities. And coming to the questions where he was talking about, this GDP is not the only measure that businesses, which is only growth focused, is actually changing. Last time I met some undergrad student from University of, some American university. And I asked them, what you really want in life? Then if you talk this question to this Gen Z, they will exactly the very, very consistent answer that we are getting is, they just want to be more mindful living, have some impact from their side. It's not about, you know, having a big car or big house or something like that, but also the impact from their side, environmental impact and social impact. They're talking about this. So the world is really changing. So this GDP, this is not the only goal that the businesses are going to sustain. And if we just incline to this GDP one word, then the businesses are not going to sustain. So we need to adopt sooner or later circular business is the only business model that is going to be there for a lot of time, because this is irreplaceable.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we discussed something that, as Professor Rahman Subhan rightly mentioned, had been a common norm and part of our culture since last many centuries, circularity and circular economy. And we are talking of how to revive it, how to formalize it, how to strengthen this system. I think at the individual level, the crux of the discussion that comes is that as consumers, as individuals, we need to keep that very old fable in mind that wealth belongs to individuals while resources belong to society. And as an individual, we shouldn't use our wealth to overconsume the resources of society, this sustainable consumption and production. As a society, we need to take care of these informal sectors, informal workers that had been supporting the circular economy, trying to mainstream them, trying to improve their working conditions, their incomes, and trying to provide them more hygienic work environment. As a government, there is a win-win situation. A major challenge that South Asian societies are facing is solid waste management. Solid waste management is not only polluting the air but also water, leading to increased cost both in terms of health as well as this cost of missing opportunities. And of course, the circular economy can be a solution for it. And for businesses, of course, the efficient use of resources, efficient use of energy, efficient use of raw material that directly feeds into their profitability. So it is something which is win-win-win for each segment of society. I think whoever we are, consumer, producer, entrepreneur, business person, academician, we need to do our bit of responsibility, put our piece of jigsaw puzzle to complete this full picture and try to revive the system that the world is trying to adopt now, circular economy. Please join me in appreciating the excellent contribution from the panel. And for a group photo, if I can ask the online panelists to remain there, and you can take a group photo taking them as well. वो आ जाएंगे पीछे क्या? हाँ एक
Standing or
डॉक्टर ना लेके बैठ के ले ले और फिर Thank you. And now with the standing. Sure. Thank you.
Okay.
We need to take another picture. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Over to the organizers.
Good.
Thank you, sir.